Hi, everyone. Since launching our podcast, we've changed the title from Bryce's Spectrum Stories to Parenting Autism. You can follow us at our Parenting Autism Facebook page, on Instagram, or at our website, parentingautismshow.com. Thanks and enjoy.
Hello, and thank you for joining us on episode 2 of Bryce's Spectrum Stories. My name is Sandy Coulter, and I am joined today by my hubby, Chris. And we are here to share with you today how we built Bryce's team after he was diagnosed with autism. We are now about 2.5 years into this journey, and we've had many people that have joined us along the way to help give Bryce therapies, to be his doctors, and to just help our little guy continue to progress, continue to learn, and to just find a way to express himself in this world. And I hope that you will enjoy what you hear, that you'll find a nugget, and if you know someone who could benefit from this, that you'll share it with them when you're finished. Thanks, and have a wonderful day. Well, hey, honey, here we are on our second episode of Bryce's Spectrum Stories.
Here we are.
And today I thought we would talk about how we have been building Bryce's team to help us along this journey.
Yes, I think it'll be helpful to a lot of people that are just getting diagnosed, because that was our sticking point. It was like once we had the diagnosis, we had a lot of brain fog because it was information overload. So it's really like, okay, what happens next?
Yeah, I think when you go on this journey, like, you know, you're a map man. You like to have maps now that there's Google Maps, but you always like the paper maps. And I think when you're heading somewhere, you always kind of like to know the direction that you're going. And when we got Bryce's diagnosis, it was as if we had to move forward without a map. So
yeah, I mean, nobody
felt lost.
Really said, okay, here's the steps that you need to take, because, you know, nobody really...
It really wasn't very specific.
There was no roadmap for sure.
There was definitely not a defined roadmap. I think the things that we knew was that he obviously couldn't talk, so we needed some type of speech or language. Then we knew about... Well, we were told about ABA, the behavior therapy. So we really hadn't seen behaviors other than some stemming at that point. But we knew that was important. Didn't really know what it meant, but we knew it was important.
Right.
And same thing with the OT, the occupational therapy. Again, didn't really understand it, but we knew it was important. And so we were just trying to wrap our mind around that kind of stuff. So knowing that we could get him speech and language and get him occupational therapy through November and Associates, which is a local place here in Port St. Lucie. They had come highly recommended by a couple of our friends that had used their services for their children. And we also knew someone through family that worked there as well. And so we knew that's where we were supposed to go. And actually, I can remember when we called Rosie, who's the owner there. And I remember her calling me back on a Sunday to talk about Bryce and our needs. And I knew right then, wow, this lady is all about her kids.
Yeah.
Like, Bryce is important to her, because she's calling me on a Sunday evening, you know, to take my call and to talk to me about what was going on. So I knew then that God was leading us to them. It was like, well, and actually we were asking her, well, how do we get to you? And what do we need to do about insurance? And we were telling her who we had. She didn't take our care insurance company at that time. So we're in the Florida Healthy Kids program, and they give you like, I think it was 3 or 4 choices, wasn't it? And so she told us which one she preferred. So we were just kind of following her map at that time.
Because we didn't know which company covered what. And even if you called the company, the people at the insurance companies really didn't even know. They're like, well, what is ABA? Or, you know, what are you talking about? Like, you know, I guess they're just used to covering doctor visits.
I know. And I don't want to talk too much about insurance, because your blood pressure is going to go up. And we've got your blood pressure so good right now. You just got your best reading last week. So we don't want to destroy that. But it was challenging with the insurance. I know. So we kind of followed her lead, and it was Melina that we got at that time. But then we ran into the problem that our pediatrician that we had, they did not take that insurance. But at that point, we're like, you know what? it's time to make the change.
Yeah, because the therapy, let's face it,
that was
more
trumping
important.
it. Yeah, that was more important. And as much as we love Dr. Chong, it was like, we can't stay there. We're in a whole different crisis situation now. And if you listen to our first episode, you'll know how important he was in our life, because Bryce had suffered his stroke, and it was Dr. Chong that was at the hospital and helped him recover. But it was time to make a change. We're 2.5 years old now, and we got to find somebody else. So I went to Google, and that's when I found Dr. Romero, and she was close to our home. She had great reviews, but most importantly, when we told her about Bryce and his autism, she was very open to whatever we were open to. Actually, I think that's the best way to put it, right, Heather? Yeah, she was wonderful, and she took time with us. I didn't feel like she was looking at her watch to see if the 15 minutes was up. I mean, it was great.
She cares.
She is wonderful.
She was open to our ideas. She's open to diet change. She looks at more at the patient, not as a symptom and then medicine. It's more symptom and diagnosis, and then, okay, what's best for the child.
That's true, because she doesn't even like to give him any antibiotics if she doesn't have to. It was, it was
She's
definitely
very conservative on the pharmaceuticals.
On the meds, yeah. And so we found her, which, when you're building a team, I think your pediatrician is your quarterback, and then you got to build the rest of your players around your quarterback.
True, because the referrals come from your quarterback. Your primary care pediatrician, she has to be on board with, the road that you're going down, and be willing to give you the referrals to the genetic doctor or the neurologist, or in Bryce's case, asthma too. So she's very much on board, and we really like her.
Yeah, so that was wonderful that we found her right at that same time. I remember that was the month of May. We were trying to get all that in place, and so by the end of May, we finally had all the red tape done, and his therapies could start. I remember Rosie took him in to evaluate him. Of course, we'd already had evaluations before from early steps. We had attempted language at that one place that did not come highly recommended, but we tried because we didn't know what else to do. And that poor girl couldn't get him to say anything. Rosie had him for an hour, maybe hour and a half. It was not very long.
It wasn't long.
No. And when he left her office, he was coming home and he was saying, "Give me." And then he could fill in the blank after that. It was amazing. And she showed us a video that she did with him with this lollipop. I remember she worked with that lollipop, and he was responding to her, and she'd like move it so his eyes would watch it, and she'd say, "Give me," So she was like this miracle worker that we were seeing, and we were very excited. We were, because it was like we were seeing glimpses of Bryce coming back to us. So we felt very encouraged. We were excited. We thought Rosie was going to be the one, but she assigned him to Heather, and Miss Heather was a little more reserved in her approach than Rosie. Rosie's extremely bubbly, is one way to put it, highly energetic. But Heather has her own approach, and Bryce responded her very well, very, very well. And I remember when we first took him and left him, it was really like the first time we were leaving him in a situation like that.
He was crying, wasn't he?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. And he was 2.5. I mean,
it was hard.
Yeah.
It was just really the first time we left him for anything.
Other than church, I want to say that.
Yeah.
But this is where he was a little more aware of what was going on. He was kind of in his own land, but he knew something was up, and we were leaving him. So it was hard, and it was heartbreaking. But we knew that he had to do this, and they were telling us, you just had to give us a chance. He'll build trust with us. And it really did not take long at all.
I mean, after 2-3 sessions.
2-3 sessions he was in.
He was good. He knew the routine, and he knew it was going to be okay.
Yep. And Heather did like the one-on-one approach, kind of cornered him at a table and started working with him. And, it's a very slow process. So if you're wanting fast results, then you're going to set yourself up for disappointment because that's just not the way it works in this land of autism. Right. It's a very gradual process. They work on one thing at a time. The great news was like you and I would communicate with them, and we were always asking, what can we work on at home that you're working on with him?
Right.
You know, so that we could reinforce
what
they were doing. And then simultaneously, well, at the same place, he also had Miss Tricia, who was doing his occupational therapy. And so he was going for 3 hours a week to see each of them. So he had 6 hours of therapy that he was doing. And then through the early steps, they assigned us a behavior analyst. And that was Miss Diana. And so I remember Miss Diana coming, and she
was bubbly too.
She was. She had her bag of tricks, all these little things that she brought. She'd sit on the floor in her bare feet playing with Bryce. And we're like, okay, you know, we really didn't know what to do because here she is in our home. I felt comfortable having her here. I just, you know, she was here to teach us. She was here. Her main goal was to teach us how to work with Bryce.
And you have mixed feelings about that because you feel like, well, why don't I know all of this stuff? Am I a bad parent? Did I just not learn to play like you have this bag of tricks? You know, he has toys. I mean, how come her toys are so special? And they work wonders.
That's true. She'd do something, we'd be like, why don't we think of that? You know, but now we're starting to think of, we get a little more creative now, but at that time you're right. I felt a little it's okay. You know, I was a little
It was all new.
It was all new to me.
Yeah,
so,
all new.
But she was great. So she would come in, I think she came once a week and would work with us, with him. So that's where the team was starting to build. And then after that, when he turned 4 in October, he no longer qualified for early steps. So we lost Miss Diana with the behavior therapy. We kept him in speech and OT through private insurance. And then we started him, he got evaluated again by the public school system. And then they got him into the ESE program, which is what the Exceptional Student Education Program. And so what a blessing that he had Miss Edwy to join our team. And she was a wonderful teacher. She also, at the time, was studying to become a board-certified behavior analyst. So she kind of taught her classroom along those lines. She was and her son also had some sensory issues. So, you know, she, as a parent, was very sensitive to her children and their needs. And Bryce didn't even cry when we took him to school. We took him, and I think he had got used to the separation by going to
therapy.
His therapies, that when he went to school, he loved going to school. And it was so cute. And when you drop him off at the curb, and then he loved watching the school buses. That was a big thrill, you know, and watching all the kids come in.
Counting the school buses when we arrived.
So,
I think, you know, we've been very fortunate and blessed to have all of the people in his life that have helped him. They all have loved kids. You know, you can just tell that every one of them has a special place in their heart for our child, and that they're doing the best that they know how to help him. And that is very comforting to know that whoever has your child is just looking out for their best interest.
Yeah, we really have been extremely blessed and protected in that way, because it's not always the case. And I have heard stories where, you know, you've had to ask for somebody different because it just wasn't a match. But in this case, we've, to date, 2.5 years in, it's been really wonderful. So we had Miss Edwy and Mrs. H. And so that was his first year. And then we really didn't get to know either his speech or his occupational therapist at the schools through the public school system.
Well, they're behind the scenes.
They are. It's different than because it was different than Heather and Tricia, where we knew them and you dropped them off and picked them up and they would tell us what was going on.
The only time you're going to see them is at the IEP.
And then we get their reports written to us telling us, you know, what he's doing, what he's not. And it's group therapy and it's group OT, which is very different than one-on-one, which I'm so glad that we did really invest in him with the one-on-one at first because I think it's made a world of difference. I remember when we went to his IEP last year, and this was his second year in the ESE program, and the OT guy was in there, and he said something. We were talking about Bryce and what he does, and he goes, well, I had him yesterday, and I had him one-on-one, and I was seeing what he was doing. I'm like, this kid really has skills. Yeah. And I was thinking to myself, you've had him for, at that point, 5 months, and you didn't know until yesterday that he had skills?
Because he was in a group setting.
Because he was in a group setting, and he doesn't shine in a group setting. He just kind of gets lost in it. So, that was enlightening for us to hear that.
Yeah, so we didn't put a lot of weight on the school system therapies because they are in group settings. They're not one-on-one. Not here anyway. So
I'm sure it has value,
and
does. I'm sure it affects
value.
him. Well, we love the fact too that he was actually. I did love the fact that he was getting language from two different people because he's getting two different perspectives, and then he was also getting OT from two different people. Right. So I didn't necessarily think they had to be on the exact same page because I felt one might add where the other one was missing. So that was good. And we were seeing him progress, and that was the main thing. We're reading the IEPs and kind of knowing where they were at. And then when so I'm kind of timelining here as we're building his team. Not to go back to the insurance nightmare too much, but we didn't give up on ABA. We just knew that we couldn't get it through Molina. But we kept trying to get through the CMS 1921, whichever one they were saying, and they just kept saying we didn't qualify because of financial reasons. But I would say for whatever reason, but I know it was God's intervention. All of a sudden, we got a letter in the mail telling us that Bryce qualified and that
they were switching it.
They were switching our insurance, and we did not question it.
We were like,
we just gave praise and said,
amazing.
Thank you, Jesus.
Yes.
And at that point, we signed up.
And that's when he really needed it.
Yeah, he did. Actually, that is exactly when he needed it because he didn't need it until that time. This is when he was 3.5. And lo and behold, if it wasn't Miss Diana that got assigned to us. So Miss Diana was back. She was familiar with Bryce. She was familiar with us, our home, our setting, our parenting style, everything. So God brought her back to us, which was wonderful. And then she was very select as to which tech she would choose to work with Bryce. And she chose Miss Rhonda, which was, again, a blessing. Miss Rhonda she is wonderful, and she has been wonderful with Bryce. And they worked very well together, and Bryce really took to her and respected her. And ABA, we could really see differences there. Again, it's an extremely slow process. If you question it because you're not seeing fast results, and I know sometimes you and I would talk and say, are you seeing anything? I mean, I'm wondering what's going on, but then we'd patiently, somewhat impatiently, but mostly patiently wait, and then we'd see it and we'd hear it, and you can all of a sudden, man, he's like having a surge and he's really doing great and saying more, and they really helped us too with behaviors. I mean, and you think what kind of behaviors, but what kind of behaviors did they help us with?
Well, that's the thing is since the ABA tech was coming to our home, he was in his environment where we were experiencing behaviors, doors or screaming, yelling, whatever it was. And so they would determine why the behavior was happening, because that's really what it boils down to is, okay, the behavior's happening, but why is the behavior happening? And I hope in a future podcast we have Miss Diana on so that she can kind of talk people through those types of things. But in any case, that was nice to have them there, because when you drop him off somewhere for therapy, or if he's getting therapy through the school, we
don't see it.
He's not in his home environment. And even with the ABA tech, sometimes we could take him outside the home, like if he had trouble going through the doors at a supermarket or some other store, where he would stand there and he's got to watch the door close, or he has to go through the door first, and if not, there was a total meltdown. Well, you can't spank a kid on the spectrum for something like that, because they don't get that concept, they don't understand that, and then when we did spank him for something one time, I just remember that it was days that really affected him, and just it was so sad for me, that he just didn't understand why he got spanked, and that it was affecting him the way it did for so long afterwards. It made me sad, but that was when I realized that, okay, disciplining Bryce is going to have to be different, and I had to go through that in order to figure that out, and it is a lot of learning as you go, how to work through these things. But the texts were definitely there at the moment to help us in those individual behaviors, and that was a blessing.
Yeah, I could have used her today when I was stuck at the doors at Aldi's. I'm not kidding. But anyway, so yeah, we have Miss Rhonda. She's been wonderful. And one thing that we've learned as well is that the texts change. And I don't think that we really knew that was going to happen, but you put it out on Facebook and said, does anybody else have frequent tech changes? And they're like, yeah, I'm like on my 4th or something. The hard part for us has been, A, we get used to somebody, but B, and most importantly, Bryce gets used to somebody.
Yeah.
And putting change on a child that already likes routine and things that are familiar, we weren't sure how that was going to work for him, but we understood that it was time to make a change. So he got Miss Alyssa.
Yeah.
And
when you're making the change, it's another stranger coming into your home, and you already had like your family unit with the other tech, they know all the routines. They know Bryce inside and out. And so when you switch to a stranger, you're like, okay, well, how are they going to be with Bryce? How are they going to be with our routine? So it kind of upsets the apple cart between us and Bryce, because it is a new person for Bryce too, so he's got to get used to the way the new tech works.
But then that's good, because we talked about it and said, well, changing it up, it's good because we don't want him stuck in the same. So Miss Alyssa may have a different approach than Miss Rhonda had,
right? And he will go through changes in life, so he's got to have
she did. And then we got him used to Miss Alyssa. And I think with Miss Alyssa, we kind of changed the approach too, because Miss Rhonda did a lot of home-based therapy. And with Alyssa, we're like, listen, it is difficult to go out with him now, because as he was getting older, the doors, Lord have mercy, the doors, among other things, but he has to do everything, and he has, his OCD is off the chart, and he adds 12 steps to get you from the front door to the driveway, because he has to do so many certain things, and if not, and he doesn't do complete meltdowns. Bryce actually does crying, and it breaks my heart, but he's very sensitive. But Alyssa was great. So, you guys did, we were doing our bathroom remodel. She's going to all the tile stores. Like, she's like whole part of this whole thing. I think we should send her pictures so she can see how the final product looks.
Yeah. Well, that included a lot of doors.
It did.
So
it was a lot of doors, and learning to be patient.
Yeah.
It was good. Yeah. It's just kind of funny because I think at some point people were probably like, is this your wife? Because I'm at work, but she's over there like doing therapy with Bryce. I'm sure people were like, whatever. So that was Miss Alyssa, and then she had a different opportunity. So then we're making another change. So then we got Miss Valeria, and it's interesting because Valeria, we actually had her as Bryce's sitter because she was highly recommended by Diana, and we needed a sitter for when we were doing our photo sessions. And so we knew Valeria, and we're like, oh, we would love to have Valeria. The catch-22 was we lost her as a sitter because she can't...
It's conflict.
Yeah, it's a conflict of interest there. However, I'm like, well, I wonder how she's going to do with Bryce, because we knew her from babysitting, and she was just so fun. And, Alyssa was a little more strict.
She was rigid,
She was, but that's what he needed.
That's what he needed.
Yeah, exactly. So we're like, oh, man, he's gonna run all over Miss Valeria, right? So she comes in. I'm like, he'll work her over. But she came in, and I just remember the day that I came home from work, and there she is hiding by under the piano, and she was playing hide and seek with Bryce.
Yep.
And it was the cutest thing. And
that was his reward for working
it
with him.
was. And so she set up the token system. And if he did 5 things that she wanted him to do, then he got to pick his reward. And it was hide and seek. And he didn't like to hide. He always liked to be the seeker.
Yeah.
So she would just run through the house and play with him. And they laughed. And he's out there negotiating with her on the timer. And they just became really great buddies.
Yeah.
And it was super sweet to watch and to listen to. And again, we saw him take off in other ways. And we would do outdoor stuff with her as well. But we did a lot of home based with her. But she had a whole different approach. So it was fresh for him. And that was great. And then
you mentioned the token system.
Yes.
And that for us, every family's different, but the token system has worked very well in Bryce's case. He gets the concept that if he gets 5 tokens, then for doing what we want him to do, then he gets to do what he wants to do.
Yeah, he gets a reward.
For a limited time.
A pre-designated reward. And it could be a variety.
Could be Duck, Duck, Goose. Could be
sometimes it's Duck, Duck,
another
Goose.
game. It could be...
Right now, his reward system at school is to play Duck, Duck, Goose. That's what he works for every day at all villages.
Yep.
To play on the playground with his friends,
Yeah.
which is really sweet.
I got to tell him about the car wash. So
And then the car wash is the big one.
His
Yes.
afternoon carrot is the car wash. He loves car washes. So Miss Rhonda, she moved up to working with him in his VPK school. And so we figured out that if he made red choices and he got a red face,
A frown face on the calendar.
and so he wouldn't be able to go outside with the rest of the kids and play Duck, Duck, Goose. But then we turned it around where if he gets a happy green face, smiley face, that not only does he get to go to the playground with the rest of the kids, he also gets to go to the car wash after school. So right now you're thinking to yourself, oh my goodness, that must rack up the big bucks going there if he's getting green smiley faces all the time. So we signed up for the monthly plan at the car wash.
Yes, best $35 you've ever spent.
So his teacher hands me the green smiley face when I pick him up. And then I told him that he has to hold it up in the air at the car wash to get the gate to go up. So he holds it up and the gate goes up. And then when we come out of the car wash, there's a green light. So I tell him he's got to hold it up to get the green light. And so it's really fun. And I'm happy to say that in the past 2 weeks that we've implemented that, he's only had 2 out of the 10 days that were the frown faces.
Yes, and I will point out that the 2 days that he got that was his first day back to school after a weekend.
That's true. Yeah.
Both times. Because I think he has to readjust.
And one of them was a long weekend.
Right.
Yeah.
So each time is like when he goes back, which right now he's on a 9-day break for Thanksgiving. So when he goes back, we'll have to really work on it. But the cutest part was I didn't know that Chris had implemented, or that you, I'm talking to you. I didn't know you had implemented where he had to hold it up for the green light to come out.
Oh, okay.
So I knew about the gate. So we're going through, and then the green light, he's like, because he's busy watching the Rainbow Car Wash and he's all into it. And then he's scrambling to get his card so he can get out, right? So he's holding it up, and I'm looking in the rearview mirror, and then I hear him say, "This green card really works."
He said that?
Yes. That's right. This green choice card really works. That's what he said.
Oh, that's awesome.
So that was the best to me. It was he gets it, and he even said it really works.
So if he gets a frown face, he really understands that that's not good and that he doesn't get a car wash. And
it's very
he
sad.
thinks about that for a long time.
He does. And then after he gets 3 green faces, he goes back to the calendar that's on our refrigerator and he erases the frown face because he doesn't want to see it anymore.
That's pretty cute.
But I love that. So yeah, so we're talking about building our great team and all these therapies and stuff. And so we have Valeria, and then we had Rhonda that came back, and she started at the VPK with him because Bryce actually was blessed with Miss Edwy 2 years in a row. And that was not a guarantee. She just happened to be at the same school and assigned to the same classroom one more time. So he had her when he was 3, when he was 3, and then he had her again when he was 4. And then because his birthday's in October, school starts before he turns 5. So we went ahead and decided to keep him in the ESE program in the morning
At the public school.
at the public school so that he can get his therapy for language and occupational therapy and be there and keep that structure. But in the afternoon, so we discontinued the private speech NOT through November and Associates, because if he's going to do school in the morning, then we wanted him to be in VPK in the afternoon, because now we're focusing on social, because a lot of his therapies were individual.
And it was recommended by ABA to have him in social environments
so he can learn to speak like his peers, because he really didn't have interest in his peeps at all.
They thought that it would be a very good idea for him to be around more kids, because really he only knew us and his therapist.
Yeah, and church, which was only once a week.
Yeah.
And again, he really just never took interest in anybody that was his size and his age. And at the ESE class that he's in now, he did have school. So that's not true, because he was at the ESE with Miss Edwy. But those kids don't engage with each other because they're all
on the spectrum.
Yeah,
somewhere.
they all have a disorder of some sort. And so it's not like
they all really don't want to be around each other.
Yeah, they kind of don't engage, It's all parallel
it's
play.
It's not that they don't want to be, but they just don't pay attention to each other.
So, and he was in his own land too. So even though we had him in school, he really still wasn't getting social. So we're like, let's give him a chance. I mean, worst case, it didn't work out.
Right. And then we just put him in public for full time.
And really the story was so awesome, because we had signed him up for the VPK at All Villages back in January. I think I got him on.
Yeah.
And then Bryce started becoming more aware of his environment, and he was progressing. But the downside of his progression was that his ADD was bumping up.
Yeah, new behavior.
Yeah, and then he was just like, doing things that Miss Edwy really felt he wouldn't be ready to start. She said maybe one more year. So we were sad about it.
And we agreed,
We did, because based on all
behaviors,
and they see him at school. We don't.
How's he going to handle the classroom? So.
Yeah, so, so we just changed it. Or changed our minds, and we gave up the spot. And I said, you know what? It's supposed to bless another family. Mm-hmm. But it was just like a couple weeks before school was supposed to start in August.
So a few more months had passed, 4 or 5 months, or 3
maybe like
or
2 or 3.
Well, we had decided in May.
And this
so
was August.
June, July, August. So yeah. Okay.
That would be 3.
Okay, 3.
You're so cute. But anyway. So anyway, we get to that, and I feel like you're rushing me. I have to say that.
No, I'm sorry.
Okay. So anyway, so let's just relax.
I was counting the months.
Then I won't lose my train of thought. But anyway, so we decided, I remember Chris calling me, and he was with Diana and Rhonda, and we said, let's try VPK. So we called the school, and I didn't know if there'd be a spot left. And Miss Aggie, who's the director and a friend of mine, she said, wow, well, I know this is of God, because there's only one spot left. It's in the afternoon, because before he would have been in morning. And it's with Miss Amanda. And Miss Amanda also has a son on the spectrum. And so she's the perfect teacher for him.
Yeah.
And that's when God brought a new person onto Bryce's team. And so this past August, he did start VPK at All Villages.
In the afternoon, yeah.
Yep, with Miss Amanda and Miss Anna. And Miss Rhonda was there with him. Mm-hmm. And the first couple of weeks, he did golden. So they said, well, maybe he doesn't need Miss Rhonda. So we tried taking her out, but that didn't go so great. So 10 days later, she was back in the classroom. But I think he just needed a little time to get acclimated. And then, the old insurance issue came up yet again. So when Bryce turned 5 last month, they changed his insurance plan again. And this time they didn't have ABA again. So the ABA is gone. So that went into effect a few weeks ago. But as you just described, we kept the token system in place. Miss Amanda's awesome about doing that. She's seen how well it works with Bryce. So, she just kind of took the reins without Miss Rhonda there. She's doing that. And then we've got the car wash incentive. Mm-hmm. And then we have Miss Nettles in the morning, she's so sweet and wonderful and so open to any of our suggestions. And so he's got a reward for when he comes home at noontime. And then he has a reward when he comes home in the afternoon, because if we tied it to both schools, we learned quickly if he gets a frown face in the morning, then he has no incentive to be good in the afternoon. So we had to create 2 different rewards, but it's working great. And again, we've just been so blessed with the team. And I'm sure team members are going to continue to change. We have no clue who his teacher's going to be in kindergarten. I mean, that's something we're already talking about and kicking around and praying about, and that's really where we got to leave it. God's given us the right people so far each time, and he'll lead us.
One other thing I want to mention, that since you brought the teachers up, is that, we asked them to kind of provide us like a report at the end of each day, just tell us about a couple of things that he did, or things that we can work on. And they've been great about doing that. So, if you ask Bryce how school was, he's not going to tell you. 12 hours later, he might mention something like, did you go to the playground?
Yeah.
And we're like, well, did you? And so if they give us clues as to what they did in the class, then we can have more of a conversation. Did you play with so-and-so today? Mm-hmm. Yes, I did. And what did you play? Did you play blocks? Yes.
It gives us clues, right?
And, so we can talk to him at least and get answers about what he did and try to evoke that conversation, the back and forth.
Teach him, what a conversation is, because for him, he doesn't quite understand that. He's great about telling us his thoughts, his needs, and even what he's seeing. He wants to share with you. He would love to tour. He would be a fantastic tour guide anywhere. He'll tell you everything that he's looking at.
Yeah.
Right here's the door. Right here's the printer. I mean, he's verbal, and that's great, but he still can't carry a conversation. But those are the things that we're working on with his team. And the last team member that I haven't mentioned in this particular podcast would be Dr. Corrales, who is his neurologist.
Yes, he's our superstar.
So, yes, we have big love for Dr. Corrales. And he has been Bryce's neurologist since he was a week old when he had the brain hemorrhage. He's the one that gave us the diagnosis 2.5 years ago. But I tell you, this man is so passionate and so caring about Bryce. He gives us his personal cell phone number. We had a seizure scare last year around this time. He was really spacing out, and one of Bryce's therapists from the school told us that he blanked out for 20 minutes. And she said, based on her 20 years of experience, that she knew it was a seizure. It might be a seizure. So we had to, do some testing. But my point being with Dr. Corrales was, I can send him a video. I can send him a text. That man responds to me. He gets us in right away. He knows we live an hour and a half, almost 2 hours, depending on traffic from where his office is. So they'll coordinate appointments so that, we don't get stuck in traffic. But he gets us in right away. And you talk about having two quarterbacks.
Yeah.
I feel like they kind of share. So him and Dr. Romero, they lead it, and then all the other people build the rest of the team. And then you and I, my goodness, I mean, you're amazing with Bryce.
Thank you.
So I just have to say that of all the team members, I love you the most. But no, seriously, you're an amazing father. You're an amazing man. And I am going to take this opportunity to tell you, and the way that you have embraced your role with Bryce. Okay, I'm not going to get too teary-eyed here, but God called me to work outside the home. It was very clear that he did. And we know the reasons that don't need to be shared on air, but it was clear. And we knew that he called you to be Bryce's Uber and to drive him to everywhere he needed to go.
Yeah.
Yes, and you do. You take him to all of those places. And thankfully, I did work my schedule to the point that even now I get to pick him up from school 2 out of the 5 days. Yeah. And 2 of the other remaining days, I'm home 30 minutes after he gets home. So that's great, but it's still a lot of the time, especially in the summer and like this 9-day span where you have a lot of time with him and you don't get to do all the things that maybe you have on your personal to-do list. But it's okay. You take him to the park. You have fun with him. And I mean, he adores you. And as he's growing older and as he's understanding more, and as you guys, again, are trying to communicate, more and more, it's so exciting to see this. And I see you guys just becoming little buddies. And, well, hey, he loves Home Depot. He loves tools and cars. Yeah. And, I think you guys are going to have a lot of things in common because you like that kind of stuff too. And it's just really neat. But without you on this team, we wouldn't have a win. That's what I know.
It takes a team. Thank you. And, you're part of this team too, that, you're helping provide for our family. We had to cut our photography back a lot because you just simply can't do all the sessions that we were doing with a little boy on the spectrum, there.
His needs first.
And so we had to rearrange a little bit, but it's just worked out beautifully, and it just flows. That we have the system down, and you're incredible when you come home and love on him, and I tell you often that every morning for me is kind of like Christmas. I get to wake up and see my boy, and he. You don't know what kind of day it's going to be when you wake up, but it always starts out joyful, and we have a little tickle session, and he loves that, and
he's such a happy boy.
He is, and then we get into our daily routine, and I wouldn't have it any other way. I just love him so much.
I know. Yeah. I love him too. We do have a great team.
I love you too.
I love you too, man. Oh, goodness. Anyway. So, yeah, that's kind of sums up our team at the moment. It has been quite the journey, but it is so important to have the right players on your team. And, we're big NFL fans, especially Philadelphia Eagles.
Woohoo.
Yeah, not after last Sunday, but, Super Bowl champs. Yeah. But, if you don't have a team player, and it may not even be that player's not good, but they may not be good in your system, then make a trade. There's nothing wrong with that, because everybody should shine where they're at. And so if you have somebody that's a technician or a therapist, and, everything has seasons as well.
Yeah.
Or a doctor. Anybody that's on your team in that way, and maybe it was good at one point, but you're seeing that it's not now, don't be shy about making a trade, because that person may need to move on, because when one door closes, another one opens, and you just got to do what's best for your family and do what's best for your child. Does it make sense where you're driving to? Does it make sense with your schedule? Are you seeing results? Don't do it just because you're quote unquote supposed to do it. You do these things because in your heart it's the right thing to do, and you're seeing results from it. Because I know if I'm going to invest, I only have so much time.
Yeah,
I want to get a great return on my investment of my time.
And every child is different
energy.
too. So,
yes.
Some people may see results sooner or later, just depending how their child learns and develops,
Well, yeah. And I think something.
But you'll know. Your gut will tell you.
Your gut will tell you. And I'm just going to point this out, and I'm going to wrap up here in a minute or two. But, you brought up the doors today. And this is something we have been working on for more than a year. Bryce really loves doors. Okay, he's very mechanical minded, and his interests expand beyond doors. But it has been difficult lately, and it is like he has to watch it close. He wants to be able to open it. Now, we have taught him that it has to be a functional purpose. So he's smart enough now that now he wants to, quote unquote, open the door for everybody, even if it's a sliding door.
Or
if he sees it open, then he's going to go and stand in front of it because he's holding it open for somebody, because he's being polite. Well, that's great, except if we walk 10 steps forward and somebody else is coming, whoa, there he goes. He's got to run back and hold the door for that person. So once we think we're over the door situation and it's under control, because we would have, the therapist working with us, and we'd get him distracted or, push through, as they say, and get him through it, then it comes back. And I've talked to other parents, and apparently that happens.
Yeah.
You may think you've gotten through one thing, then it's going to come back again, or it's going to come back in a different form.
But we pick our battles.
Yeah,
we
do.
If it's not the time and place that we want to deal with a meltdown, then we let him do his thing for a minute or two, and then we tell him, hey, it's
and that's the key.
It's done.
If it's a minute or two, and then you just got to give him a incentive to get on through, and then you dangle the word car wash on him.
Yeah,
and
that's true.
That works wonders.
Green choices.
Green choices, buddy. Car wash. So anyway.
That flips the switch.
It does flip the switch. All right, well, I want to speak now and just say thank you for joining us on this episode. I hope that, you found it interesting, and also it gets your wheels spinning, that if you're on this journey, especially if you're newer to this journey and maybe not quite as seasoned, that you'll start planning out your roadmap. And if you're listening to this and you're thinking, wow, maybe I do need to make a change, don't ignore your gut. We just pray that you will be able to find the best help for your child, because, Chris and I, we're a part of this community, and we love the people that we meet in this community that we otherwise would not have met if we didn't have this blessing that we've embraced called autism touch our family. And so we're taking everything that we can to help other families so that they too can view it as a blessing, and we hope that you see it that way.
And and if you like our podcast, please subscribe, and if you feel led, leave us a review, and that
or
helps
share it with someone.
That helps other families find us.
It does. And if you could share it with someone as well, if maybe you're listening to this and you know someone that may benefit from it.
Everybody knows somebody in our world.
That's the truth. All right. Well, on that note, we're going to say we hope you have a wonderful day, and we'll look forward to talking to you again soon.
Peace out.
Bye.